In the last stream, we were working on setting up these large multi-block structures over here, those being the nuclear reactor and these two reprocessors. The reprocessors allow us to turn uranium into cyanide, cyanide into plutonium, and in fact, if we take these out as I go around here, I believe we're going to complete some quests, because I don't think we've actually held every single one of these ingots yet, but the cyanide is turned into plutonium, the plutonium is turned into ludicrite, the ludicrite is turned into radiculite, and then finally, the radiculite is turned into inanite, which we've been using over in our nuclear reactor to produce not only 20,000 redstone flux per tick, but also 12 millibuckets of nuclear waste, which we've then been turning into polonium and plutonium using the solar neutron activator and the isotopic centrifuge. And the reason for that, of course, is that in order to progress forward, we need to automate the production of ultimate technium ingots, which does require safe spent nuclear waste as well as antimatter. And both of those require the base nuclear waste in some way, shape, or form. And the plan for today's stream is going to be to try and automate all of the items required for the ultimate technium ingot. Before we get started with that, though, what I have gone ahead and done between streams is I've set up a new platform up behind our pre-existing platform, and my plan is going to be to move some of these large multi-block structures up to that platform, because right now they're kind of haphazardly placed in the middle of the base here, and I don't think that it looks particularly great. Also, if we do want to automate the production of antimatter pellets, we are going to have to automate the production of this liquid antimatter, which requires yet another nuclear reactor. And so we are going to have to build a second one of these, again, up on that new platform. I was going to move these up between streams, but then I remembered that we still do not have access to ULTIMINE, and so it was going to take quite a while to break that entire multi-block down. And so I think the very first thing that we should do in today's stream is look at completing the elite research for the miner's certificate. This is finally 18 episodes in, gonna give us access to FTB ULTIMINE and allow us to tear this thing down so much faster. To do that, we need to get the ULTIMINE blueprint. The ULTIMINE blueprint here does require more elite research, and that kind of takes us to a problem that's been building up over the last few episodes, and that problem, of course, is that we did turn off the production of diamond plates to allow us to back up on diamonds so that we had them available for our general crafting needs. Now, what I've gone ahead and done here is I've added a storage upgrade on top of the storage downgrade inside of this drawer for diamonds. We could have just taken the storage downgrade out, and that would have lifted the capacity of the storage drawer from 64 up to 2048. The reason that I didn't do that is the same reason that we have the storage downgrade there in the first place, in that I don't want all of our coal to be used on making diamonds, leaving us with no coal for other crafts. And so I've gone for a bit of a middle ground here, where we do have 4 times the diamond capacity, but we're still not burning through all of our coal and charcoal all of the time. In fact, quite the opposite. I think we're now fully backed up on charcoal in here and kind of backing up on wood in these cloches, and we're also backing up on blocks of coal in our coal drawer as well. And so I think with all of that in mind, we might actually be able to go ahead and kind of re-enable this pipe right here to bring the diamond plates back online. That's going to start making more elite ingots for us, and we can of course use those elite technium ingots to get elite research, which we're going to need for that miner's certificate. So over here, I will go ahead and drop this guy in. That's going to get us 10 more of those elite research. And whilst we wait for that, we should probably go ahead and teach our system how to make digital miners and potentially how to make some of the subcomponents required here as well. We do only need 4 digital miners in total, and we're not really going to need the digital miner, I don't think, after this piece of research is complete, so we'll probably go ahead and take that back out once it's done. To make the digital miner, really, all we need to request is the teleportation cores and the atomic alloys. I don't think everything else here should be too difficult. We've made a bunch of item routers so far in the playthrough. It is made using the basic logistical transporters, which again, we have made a ton of so far in the playthrough. And so making 16 of these really shouldn't be too difficult, assuming we have enough treated wood, which we totally do. And then from there, making the actual logistical sorter should be fairly straightforward as well. We just need 16 of these blank upgrades. Perfect. And then that's 8 logistical sorters. Nice. On top of that, we also need 4 of these robots. These are made with steel, reinforced obsidian, energy tablets, atomic alloys, and then a personal chest. The personal chest, super straightforward, chests, steel, and a basic control circuit. Nothing that we cannot do. I'm going to go ahead and request a few of the items here. I might also just go ahead and teach the system how to make the robot like this. Again, that's another pattern that we can go ahead and just pull out of there once it's no longer needed. I'm going to request these first, and then once those are in, we'll also go ahead and request the digital miner, at which point that should be basically everything we need to unlock the miner's certificate, which I believe is going to give us access to ULTIMINE with any tool that we like. However, in order to actually get the miner's certificate, we are going to have to make an atomic disassembler. This is a pretty powerful multi-tool from Mekanism, and I do think we should also look at getting a second atomic disassembler to just use generally around the base, because I think it is going to be faster than using the Diamond Paxel, and it's also rechargeable as well, which means it's going to work quite well into the future. So for this, we're just missing energy tablets and refined obsidian. Let me click start and start on that. Those extra crafting CPUs that we made in a previous episode are really coming in helpful here because they're allowing us to do multiple crafts at once. Boom. And we'll also go ahead and do the request again here so we can get yet another atomic disassembler. And once all that comes in, we should be pretty much good to go on getting 4 digital miners and the miner's certificate. And not too long later, we have 4 digital miners. Let's throw that into the researcher with a ton of elite research, which is now coming in nice and fast. Once that's done, we can then combine that over in our elite research crafter with the atomic disassembler to get that miner's certificate. And if I'm not mistaken, all we have to do is just right-click the miner's certificate and we will have access to the ULTIMINE ability. Over here, we can go ahead and use some of the very small amount of power that we have stored inside of our induction matrix to charge our atomic disassembler. It's not much. It says we've got 4,000 FE in here out of a possible 57 billion, but it apparently is more than enough to charge the atomic disassembler. And now we just need to make sure that we use the right one, that being the empty one here, to craft up the actual miner's certificate over in here. Boom, and boom. Congratulations on learning the excavation skill. Fantastic. So now, if we head on back downstairs, presumably, we can first of all check to make sure this is empty. It is indeed. We'll take this out. We should now be able to hold down the ULTIMINE key, make sure that we're on shapeless in the top left there. If you're not, you can hold shift and scroll to change which mode. And then now it's going to break all of the blocks that are the same block as the block you're breaking. So it'll break all of the fuel rods at once. It will break all of the reactor, all of the reinforced machine casing at once, all of the reactor casing at once, and it just makes tearing down large machines like this much, much faster. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is also tear down the reprocessors over here, and we're going to rebuild these structures up on the newer platform over here, which should be fairly straightforward because, of course, we can just use our nuclear reactor placer to very quickly replace the whole multi-block. One thing that the chat has pointed out to me is that much like the reprocessor here, the nuclear reactor can have a nuclear reactor block on each of the 4 sides of the multi-block, and so we actually don't have to make another full multi-block reactor. We can just use the one multi-block with up to 4 of these nuclear reactors to do as many recipes as we like. Alright, so not too long later, and we've replaced down the nuclear reactor up in the center here, and it's flanked on either side by our 2 reprocessors. This one right here is going to be the one that turns uranium into cyanide, and then over here we of course have the 4 down that are going to do all of the rest of the processing up to a nanite. I have, for now at least, put the controller, the XNet controller, with the 2 tanks right here on the left side of this reprocessor. We can always move it if we do need to put down, 4 more reprocessors here to get the maximum speed out of this multi-block, but for now this is kind of nicely nestled away. And I was in the process of reconfiguring the XNet system when the power situation kind of came up. So we could, if we wanted to, do what we've been doing all through the playthrough so far, and that is run more universal cable up to this reactor to both power things like the controller and also pull power from the nuclear reactor. But we do now have access to the quantum entangler porters here from Mekanism, and if we do a quick pattern teach like this, it really shouldn't be that difficult for our AE2 system to make us at least 2 quantum entangler porters. And the reason that we want these is these are going to make it easy for us to wirelessly move power around the base. And so what I'm thinking of doing is kind of placing one of these directly above the nuclear reactor. That should allow us to take all of the power generated by the nuclear reactor and send it wirelessly anywhere we like. I've gone ahead and built a very short little induction matrix up on the top here. This has been made using the exact same blocks that we had previously, and so right now it is not very large and doesn't have that much capacity. In fact, I did miss one induction cell, but right now it is a little bit empty in there, but of course we can make that taller in the future. And of course, as we saw before, it does carry over the power when you break it and replace it, which is very nice indeed. And so the thought process here is that as soon as these are done, I'm going to put one down on top of here to send power up to the induction matrix. And I think I'm going to tweak the system so that all of our power is routed through the induction matrix. Right now, we kind of just have power going from our machines here to wherever it's needed, but going forward, I think it's going to make sense for things like this reactor to not go offline when there are no machines that need it. Instead, I want all of the power to go up and into the induction matrix, and then have all the power kind of come out of the induction matrix as well. That way, if we're ever producing an excess, it will get stored in here. Also, apparently that's a quest complete. Nice. So the way this works is we put down our quantum entangleporter like this. In here, we're going to set the power input frequency. You can call this whatever you like. We're going to call it power input. We're going to make sure that it is set to private. Actually, we'll call this power input. Try that again. Tick and set. And so now making it private just means that other people on the server can't use that same frequency. It's just for us to use. And then up here, if we go to private and we click on power input and set, that should now receive any power generated from here. Just like all other mechanism machines, there is a side configuration. Right now, this is set to input, which is perfect for the reactor side. And up here, we can set the side that touches the induction port to output with auto eject set to on, of course, making sure that we're in the energy tab like that. And so now if I put like one nanite ingot into here, again, with the Elite Technium machine frame, we should see that no power is being stored in here. And that's because all of that power is being sent wirelessly up into the induction matrix. And so what I'm then going to do is I'm going to go ahead and request another 2 quantum entangleporters, and we're going to put another one on the output side and set up a new frequency called power output. And then from there, we can kind of pull the power from that induction matrix, and we can put that down really anywhere in the base connected to our universal cable to actually send that power around to everything else. I think I might also actually, for the sake of consistency, make a 3rd quantum entangleporter as well, and kind of disconnect this setup. Right now, this setup pumps directly into our basic universal cables, but instead what I'll do is I'll disconnect this so that this pumps into its own quantum entangleporter set to power input, so that all of the power, even the stuff from our biogenerators, is going to first go through the induction casing and then be pumped around to the rest of the base. And while I wait for those to come in, I'm going to finish setting up the XNet setup here to make sure that all of the nanite is actually coming in automatically. All right, so this is now back online. We have the XNet system moving everything to where it needs to go. We've got our uranium coming back into here, being turned into cyanide, and then all of the rest of the ingots working their way around into the nuclear reactor. I have set it up this time so that the nanite goes directly into the nuclear reactor via XNet as well, using the final item channel. We have immediately and somewhat predictably run into a diamond problem. I have temporarily, once again, disconnected that pipe. What I have tried to do here to make things a little bit faster is I've made another set of ender tanks, and I've left them on the white frequency here so that we can set up liquid nitrogen cooling over here for this simple solidifier. Of course, we could have gone ahead and just run an XNet connector over to here, but I think it is going forward going to be easier to just pump the nitrogen around. I think the nitrogen is a liquid, and so doing this should work. And again, if we just set that to extract, like so, that's going to go ahead. And actually, we did see this before. I do this every time. All we really need to do is put this down like this and turn that on. And I think that's going to auto-eject into the tank. That's going to make the casting of purified coal blocks into diamonds a bit faster. That makes our limiting factor this basic purifying factory. Right now, it has 0 speed or energy upgrades. I do think that putting all 8 of them in here is going to be a bit overboard. Also, did I not teach my system how to make either the speed or the energy upgrades? I did not. I definitely think that's going to be worth teaching. Let me encode this. I don't know if my system knows how to make osmium dust, but that is also a fairly easy recipe to teach. We can throw it into the crusher, and then the energy upgrades are, of course, also kind of the same deal here. It looks like our system also doesn't know how to make gold dust. That, again, is fine. Boom and boom. Let's throw those 2 into the crushing factory. And the other 2 can go, of course, into our ME pattern providers. Although it looks like we have kind of filled every single one of these up, even after taking out the 2 that I made earlier for the digital miner and for the Robert, we are now fully out of space. So if we want to auto-craft more, we need to set another one of these up, which is probably not a bad idea. I'm also thinking of moving this as well to a more sensible location, because right now it's kind of in the way of the stairs there. But either way, for now, we should be able to go ahead and request, let's say, 8 of those energy upgrades. I don't know if it's strictly necessary for us to put a full 8 speed upgrades in here. That's probably going to be slight overkill. Let me see, though. If I throw in you and you, that's going to make this a lot faster. And then over here, we should see this casting a lot faster into diamonds as well. We're almost backed up. So over here, we do have 64 diamond plates. So we are fully backed up there on diamond plates now. And over in here, we're fully backed up on molten diamond. So it's just this tank that needs to back up. And so I am going to reconnect this here. And I don't think it should be too long before we get to a point where we're actually backing up on diamonds again, which I think is going to be good for us. So over here, this is now ready to go. The last thing we need to do is, somewhat awkwardly, we need to move the machines that currently contain radioactive material, which wouldn't be a problem if I hadn't have done this in like such a bad way, because what I've done here is I've managed to split some of the nuclear waste to where we have 4.2 buckets of plutonium and 4.8 buckets of polonium. So what I can do is I can go and get a bunch more fluorite, crush that into fluorite dust and place that into these PRCs here to make more polonium and plutonium, but we're going to be left with 200 millibuckets of plutonium in this reaction chamber and 800 millibuckets in this reaction chamber. There's a possibility that these machines might retain their inventory when they're broken, but what we can also do, just to be safe, is we can go ahead and craft another radioactive waste barrel. And as mentioned in the quest book, it says the right-of-way machine can also be used to remove radiation from the world, place a waste barrel inside the machine to clear the world. And so what we're going to do, we're going to get some more fluorite, we're going to use what we can of what is in here, then I'm going to go ahead and break these machines. If radiation leaks out into the world, we're going to use the right-of-way machine with the barrel to clear it. If it doesn't, all is good. Now, the question of fluorite is a good one, because we do need to actually automate the production of fluorite to automate the production of the polonium and the plutonium. And the fluorite is made automatically using the dimensional infuser with some brine. Right now, we don't have a spare dimensional infuser. We have one that's being used to make the skystone and one that's being used to make the black quartz. What I think I'm probably going to do here is once again move the arc furnace to a new location so that we can put down another dimensional infuser right here, and one dimensional infuser later, we've got that receiving brine from downstairs, it's turning it into fluorite, and we've run some framed trim here to connect this up to our ender storage upgrade. So now we can, of course, go ahead and lock this drawer with our key and take some of that fluorite out to see about clearing this downstairs. So let's do this and this. Hopefully that's going to fairly quickly use up all of the polonium and plutonium that we have available there. But as soon as these are empty, the isotopic centrifuge, we can safely break that, and the solar neutron activator, we can hopefully safely break that. We can move those upstairs. I am very interested to see if this actually retains its inventory. Normally they do retain their inventory, but I think there is a chance it's going to break anyway. Let me quickly see about running. You've got power. Oh, but you're just not connected up to that cable. I see. So if we just do this, we should have access to the 7.9 million FE in there. Perfect. Nice. Okay, that's going to go ahead and allow that to finish doing what it's doing. As soon as you are empty, we can break you as well. Again, being somewhat careful to only break what we need to break. And here we go, moment of truth. We now have just the 800 millibuckets in here and just the 200 in here. I have my radioactive waste barrel at the ready. One thing I am going to do here is grab my hazmat leggings and put those on, because if the radiation does seep out into the world, then I'm going to get irradiated very quickly, which is not ideal, especially if I don't have my leggings on. So let me pick up some of this stuff here. If I pick this guy up, which I can't do with the wrench, that does release radiation. You'll see the green particle effects everywhere right away. That was to be expected. I was really hoping to not lose my PRC there. That is fine. We can make another PRC. And as we saw, the good news here is that we should be able to just put the radioactive waste barrel into here, and it's going to run the mechanism commands to remove all of the radiation. Let me see if that just works. It does just work. Nice. Okay, good. So I'm going to leave this running here because we do still need to get rid of all of this spent nuclear waste. If I break this, the same thing is going to happen. And so we'll leave that until it's turned it on to spent nuclear waste. But real quick, I'm going to take these upstairs, or I'm going to go make a new PRC and take it upstairs, and we're going to reset up both the solar neutron activator and the isotopic centrifuge to allow us to hopefully fully automate the production of the polonium and plutonium, at which point we can then look at putting a second nuclear reactor down on one of the other sides of this multi-block to allow us to actually start making antimatter. And now, with these reset up, receiving the nuclear waste from the nuclear reactor via some pressurized tubing, we're producing the polonium and plutonium automatically. Those are both being pumped forward into their respective pressurized reaction chambers. I've gone ahead and crafted up 2 more ME export buses here so that we can take the fluorite that we're now producing over in the corner there and export that to both of these machines, like so. And hopefully that should, so long as the right side there is set to input, like that, that's going to start making actively both the polonium and plutonium. We do also need to send power around to that, which we can do via our XNet system here, which is also how we're sending water to both PRCs, just like we were doing before. And in fact, it's probably well worth putting a connector down under this isotopic centrifuge as well. There's already a cable there. If we quickly replace that cable with a connector like that, we can also send power into the isotopic centrifuge as well using the XNet connector. Saves us running an extra cable round to that machine. And then from there, that should go ahead and output the polonium into here. Let's make sure that is locked. Again, I have put down some trim to connect these two up, and so if we just get another one of the remote upgrades, again, specifically the one that connects a draw group, we can put that into either one of these, and that should bring both of these online. Cool. This one is a little slower because it doesn't have any speed or energy upgrades in it. How much power are we using? We're using 80 FE per tick right now. I will go ahead and request the maximum 8 speed and energy upgrades. That might end up taking the power usage a bit too high. We can always throttle it back though and use fewer of them if needs be. Let me give this a go. So we can put these in first. That brings the power right down to just 8. And then with the maximum speed, it goes a little bit crazy. Let's go with like 3 or 2 for now. That should be fine. We don't need these coming in massive quantities. What we do need to do is we do need to lock this draw here to the plutonium pellets to make sure that's all that is produced there. And then of course, we also need to take that spent nuclear waste and reprocess that as well down here. In the time that it's taken me to move that, this is now empty. And so we can safely go ahead and break the right-away machine. We can also safely go ahead and pick up the remainder of these pipes here and just reset this up by a reactor. And there we go. This is now up and running. We've gone ahead and thrown down some pressurized tubing to connect that up, so all of the nuclear waste is being pumped around into the right-away machine. It turns out as well, you can just pull from the quantum entangler porter here. I'm assuming that the universal cable is pulling the power before it sends it up to here, and so we didn't have to run like a fresh power cable around. We could just pull it straight from the quantum entangler porter, which is taking power straight from the reactor. And so now we're going to start to slowly but surely back up on the spent nuclear waste. This whole system will eventually stop working when this fills up with spent nuclear waste, but at the current speed at which it's filling up, I think we've got a decent amount of time before that happens. And so now, what I guess we want to do is we want to go ahead and make another one of the nuclear reactor blocks, place that down on another side of the reactor, and then pump both the plutonium and polonium into that reactor so that we can start making the liquid antimatter. So once we have the new nuclear reactor down on this right side of the multi-block, this does require power. It actually requires 10,240 FE per tick to make the antimatter, which is pretty expensive, but should be fine. We have managed to accumulate a few 100 million FE inside of our induction matrix here, especially with this running at full tilt. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and make sure that I don't break my XNet system, but I'm going to pull from this quantum entangler porter. This one right here is the one that's providing power to the XNet system. So this one is also set to power output, as you can see right here under frequency, which of course is the same frequency that we're pulling from our induction matrix. I should probably go ahead and use the elite cable here because we do need to pull more than 3,200 FE per tick. And so for that, we should probably do the sensible thing, and that is kind of pick up some of the elite cable that we have down here, ready to go. And then if we take that back up here, we should just be able to extract from this quantum entangler porter fairly easily, kind of up and around into here. That does mean that I'm going to have to reroute my XNet cable, but that should not be a problem if we quickly do something like that. That should now allow this to be filled up on power. It does. And then using the exporter over here, we can connect that up to our pre-existing cable, which we've run, of course, for all of our AE2 requirements so far. We just ran a dense cable from the controller kind of out in this direction and up. And so now, if we tell this guy here to export both plutonium and polonium, as soon as we connect that up, it should go ahead and pull the plutonium and polonium from these drawers around into this reactor, at which point it's going to start kind of perpetually producing the antimatter. And there we go. That is now exporting the plutonium, and eventually it'll export the polonium as well. Fantastic. We can cover all of that up. And now, if we want to actually use the antimatter that is being produced here, that is where we need this antiprotonic nuclear synthesizer. This doesn't look too difficult to make. In fact, we've taught our system how to make every single part of this equation. The only thing we're missing is some elite technium nuggets, and that's just because our system doesn't know how to craft them into actual nugget form. The tricky part, I think, about the setup that we're going to have to do here is just the amount of power, the sheer amount of power required in order to turn 100 millibuckets of antimatter with one unstable matter into one antimatter pellet. I've been told this takes a very, very, very large amount of power. Let me once again try and request the remaining items there, and once those are all in, we're going to extract the antimatter from here using some more pressurized tubing. Real quick, let me do something like this to cover that up. We're going to extract from there, and we're going to pump around into the nuclear synthesizer. So let me go ahead and I guess put that down right about here. It is going to need power. And again, the elite universal cable might not even be good enough. We might have to just run either ultimate cable or maybe put a quantum entangler porter directly underneath it, which would be doable. We could always move this over to just underneath the nuclear synthesizer if necessary. For now, though, let's do this and let's run the power cable over to here. And then from there, can we get this show on the road? If I do something like this, that needs to be set to extract to pull the antimatter out. And then in here, we need to just grab one of the unstable matters. I did request a few more a moment ago because we needed one to make the reactor. I requested a few extra just so that we have them. And over here, if we drop one of these in, it's currently not using any power. But if I put this in here, it did use a few million FE per tick. I don't know if you caught that there. It's got 190 million inside of it. Thankfully, we do have hundreds of millions of FE backed up, or we did, I should say. We're going to very quickly run out of that. We've got 700 million. Down here, we've stored another 200 million. If I put one of these in, it does go down. It used maybe like 30 million, maybe 25 million FE to make that happen. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to say in the recipe exactly how much it uses, but that is antimatter made. And also, by the looks of it, we can also make some emeralds as well if we want to turn our diamonds into emeralds, which I guess we might as well do for the quest here. How much antimatter does that use? 500 millibuckets. It's a little pricey. And it also requires, again, tens of millions of redstone flux, but this is now good to go. And I think going forward, we can actually make emeralds using the replication mod. You'll see it's made just using precious, and we need 36 of it. And so effectively, we can turn like our copper ingots into emeralds because it's 2 precious per copper ingot, and so 18 copper ingots there would get us 1 emerald, so we don't have to do that again going forward. We just need to automate the production of unstable matter so that we can turn it into automatic antimatter pellets, because these antimatter pellets are required as part of the ultimate technium ingot. And speaking of the ultimate technium ingot, we should probably pivot over now to actually building the multi-block structure required to begin producing these ultimate technium ingots. The good news here is that I don't think this is going to be particularly hard for us to build. To make it, we just need 9 blocks of uranium, 16 reactor glass, 1 simulation chamber, 16 machine circuitry, 57 reinforced machine casing, 12 reactor casing, and 9 replica blocks. None of that seems particularly difficult. Replica we have a decently large amount of, and we can of course get even more using the simulation pearls that we've been getting from our Enderman data model, and we can even get more of those if we need more going forward. But most of this is just stuff that we've been using for all of our multi-blocks, and so real quick, I'm going to go ahead and request all of the items required to hopefully get this built. And a bit more auto crafting later, we can go ahead and purchase the ultimate Technium Placer, and I believe we have everything that we need in order to shift right click over here and build our fourth and final overworld Technium machine. I say that because there are still 3 more tiers of Technium for us to make, but all of these, I believe, actually have to be built and crafted in a different dimension. So we do have more multi-blocks that we need to build, but those multi-blocks need to be built, I believe, in the Nether for the Hellish dimension, on the Moon, I think, for the Lunar Technium, and then I believe in the End for the End Technium. So we've got multiple different dimensions that we need to work through. Here we have our ultimate Technium machine, and now we can look at making some of the items required for this. The good news is that quite a few of these have already been either made or automated. So safe spent nuclear waste, I would say, is already automated. We have that being produced. We just need to pump it around into here. The chat did make a good point in that over here, what we can do is at the bottom right, this actually has a button similar to the button on the electrolytic separator where you can change the mode to dumping excess. And essentially what will happen there is once this fills up with 8.192 million millibuckets of safe spent nuclear waste, any excess will then just be deleted as opposed to clogging up the whole system, which is good. The good news is we're probably not going to have to do that though, because we do need quite a bit of it for every ultimate Technium ingot. We need 8,000 millibuckets per ultimate Technium. We also need some power, which is fine. We have power, at least for now. We need mob essence. We'll come back to that one. I'm going to bookmark it. And then as for the rest of these, Elite Technium, of course, is already done. We're making that. Inanite is also already done. We are making that. I think, or I should say I hope, we're making it faster than our reactor is using it. That might not be true, but if it is true, we can always take the Elite Technium machine frame out of here, and we do have the option of putting those machine frames into these other reprocessors to make those faster at making the Inanite. And then we could also look at doing some splitting, where we kind of divide the Inanite up between the nuclear reactor and the ultimate Technium machine over there. Either way, that should not be a problem for us. Looking back here, the replica blocks are also pretty straightforward. We have 2 options, I believe. We can either start siphoning off some of the Enderman predictions from here and using those to make more simulation pearls, which we can then, of course, grind, smelt, and craft into replica blocks. That would be fairly straightforward. Or if we wanted to, we could also look at getting dimensional replica ore, which we could then use like we're doing with gold and uranium downstairs to produce replica ingots using the 10-long line of mechanism machines. Either of those are a possibility. I think we'll probably start by using the simulation pearls, and if it's not fast enough, we can always pivot over to the dimensional ores. The cyanide plates are pretty straightforward. We take the cyanide that we're already making and just run it through one of our metal presses to turn it into plates. The platinum rods should be fairly straightforward. It's just a case of taking platinum and running it through a metal press to make rods. The trouble with this is that we don't currently have platinum being made, and I believe that if we want to make platinum, you guessed it, we have to make the dimensional platinum ore, which we get from regular platinum ore, which we get from platinum dust, which we get from platinum ingots, which we get by putting Inanite into a dimensional infuser. This is actually not that bad. If we go and steal some of the Inanite that's kind of backing up in here, we've got 46. In order to make the dimensional platinum ore, we only need 48 platinum dust, which is going to be 48 Inanite, but we're actually pretty close. We're 1 away if we keep siphoning it out of the reactor here, and in fact, we got 33 more in the system. Nice. Okay, good. So we're kind of there on that. Let me hijack one of these dimensional infusers temporarily for exactly this purpose. I'm going to throw 48 of you into there. We can throw that skystone probably into the trash can. I was going to put it in the system, but we have 2048, and it would just kind of clog up our ME drive there, so there's really no point in us keeping that. We'll leave that running in the background. That should be everything that we need for the platinum ore. Back in here, we then need antimatter pellets, which of course is going to require that we automate the production of unstable matter. That's also one that we're going to come back to. The fluidizer casing here doesn't seem too bad. This one is just cyanide and machine casing. And so I think for that one, we're probably just going to teach our AE2 system how to craft the fluidizer casing and how to craft the steel casing, and then we'll just throw an exporter down onto the ultimate Technium machine there to allow our system to continually craft and export those fluidizer blocks. And then I think after that, it's just Enderium gears, which are Enderium ingots through a metal press with a gear mold, or through a solidifier with a gear mold. Enderium is an alloy that we're going to have to make using the mixer from the casting mod. Here we're going to combine molten ender, molten lead, and molten platinum. So this, again, another recipe that requires that we get the platinum first, but I don't think that should be too bad. And then down here, the last item on the list is a double crate of rotten fleshes, which is made by crafting 9 crates of rotten flesh, which is made by crafting 9 rotten flesh. And so I think for this, we're going to want to set up another little hostile neural network system, so another simulation chamber with another loot fabricator, but this time, of course, with a zombie data model inside that's going to allow us to continually produce rotten flesh, which we can then just double craft into crates and then double compressed crates to send around. And so the good news is here that I don't think this is going to be that difficult for us to do. A lot of this is stuff we're either already making or very close to being able to make. The molten mob essence, by the way, is made in another multi-block structure. If we go back to the ultimate quest line and we go back to replication, on the right here, there is a little section of the quest book for setting up the fluidizer. This is another multi-block that's going to allow us to create the mob essence. Essentially here, we can insert power and mob drops to produce mob essence. And after taking a look through the different options between streams, I believe that the generalized ender prediction here is our best bet. It produces 5,000 millibuckets of mob essence per generalized ender prediction compared to like 100 from a rotten flesh, so it's 50 times better. And even better still, our current system is actually fully clogged up because of the fact that we have too much of this generalized ender prediction. And so we should probably look at getting another draw upgrade. If we were to make, say, a gold upgrade here, we could throw that in. That's going to increase the capacity of this draw, allowing this to come back online. And going forward, we can, of course, just use these in the fluidizer to make the mob essence. But real quick, what I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make another dimensional ore extractor. I'm also going to make another set of all of the mechanism machines down here that are required for the dimensional ore extractor so that we can set up a line of machinery for platinum. And the Twitch chat has also been suggesting pretty aggressively that we should probably look to doing the same with diamond ore as well, because I have had to, once again, throughout this stream, I've been kind of reconnecting and disconnecting this pipe here because I reconnect it and we run out of diamonds and we're so close to backing up on plates, but then we don't have any diamonds for doing any crafts, and so it becomes kind of hard to progress, and so I disconnect it to allow us to get diamonds. And whilst this does work, it is very, very slow. And going forward, I think it's just going to be way easier if we have some dimensional diamond ore set up as well. For this, it's the exact same setup, of course. It's 8 diamond ore, which we can get from 12 diamond dust a piece. And so we need almost 100 diamonds to make this happen. And as luck would have it, we are currently at 93 diamonds with the ability to make more if we want using our replication terminal. We can make 76 more here if we'd like. And so I'm probably going to go ahead and actually set up 2 more of these dimensional ore extractors with 2 more lines of machinery for both platinum and diamond ore. Okay, so it has been a little bit of time, but we do now have 2 more of the dimensional ore extractors with a full line of machines, and we also have 8 diamond ore and 4 platinum ore, so we should be able to go ahead and process these again in one of our dimensional infusers. If we do something like that, that should get us the dimensional diamond ore, and that should get us the dimensional platinum ore, which we can of course place in the center of our new dimensional ore extractors. We'll put diamonds in right about here. Boom, with the glass back on top. And then we'll do the exact same thing over here with the platinum ore. Nice. I think I might need to run power to these guys, because I think right now we have power running to everything else, but not to the actual dimensional ore extractor itself. Thankfully, that's a very easy fix. We can do this, and then replace down our white tile, and we can do the exact same thing right about here. By default, this atomic disassembler is slower than our diamond pixel, but if you shift and scroll, you can change the setting. It starts off at slow, you can change it to normal or to fast, and if we make it fast, it becomes much faster. Cool. So if we connect that up, now we should see both of these kick into gear, and they should both start making the diamond and the platinum ore. One recommendation from the Twitch chat is the configuration card here. This is going to allow us to easily copy and paste the settings from our mechanism machines. So I think we shift right click to copy the data, and then we can right click and right click, and that has now copied the configuration of this chemical dissolution chamber so that if we look in here, for example, at the chemicals tab, auto eject is on and it's pushing to the right. And if we do the same again, if we shift right click here, we can then right click, and it's just an easier way of copying and pasting the configurations of the machine to make sure that they're all receiving from the right sides and they're all auto ejecting to the right sides as well. Previously, we were using enrichment chambers here with flint to produce the oxygen, as well as, of course, the electrolytic separator here. We are running a little low on flint, actually, because we've been using it all to make diamonds up on the surface. And so what I am going to do here, I'm going to see if our electrolytic separator is up to the job. If we go along this line and just make sure that this doesn't connect, I don't think it's going to connect if I do like this. It's not. I don't think that's going to connect. If we just keep going like this, though, we should be able, hopefully, to set these to input from the top and receive the oxygen that's coming from that electrolytic separator. Here, let's make sure that chemical is set to input, like that. And again, if we go ahead and just copy that with the memory card like this, we can paste it right about here. And I'll also do it here as well, because this one, as we saw a second ago, is not receiving any flint. There. Should bring that online. I haven't made the factory upgrades or any speed and energy upgrades for this just yet. We can, of course, do all of that if we want to make this faster, but kind of just as a proof of concept, let me lock these drawers here, which, as you can see, have been connected up to the system via trim. That's why they've managed to get random junk inside of them, but hopefully we should be about to get our first platinum and our first diamond that we're making via the new system. Never mind, that is because this is not something that requires an energized smelter. We need an enrichment chamber at the end here for the diamonds to be processed. Cool, that is actually fine. Turn auto eject on. Good, okay, so now we are making diamonds again down here. I'm going to leave the system upstairs on for the time being. Eventually we can probably retire that to hopefully get our flint production back online as well. But for now, making diamonds in 2 locations, I think, is going to be better than making them in 1, especially because right now this is also not particularly fast, but we do now have the platinum. And so now looking back at the ultimate Technium Ingot here, this shouldn't be too difficult. Getting the platinum rods, as I mentioned earlier, should just be a case of getting down another metal press for that. I think I will dedicate a metal press to it. One thing we could do if we wanted to is we could put a pattern into the metal press that has the rod mold. That's this one. So we could put a pattern in here that teaches the system how to make platinum rods, and then we could use an exporter with a crafting card to auto craft and export the platinum rods to the ultimate Technium machine as and when they're needed. The trouble with that, though, is that it kind of just congests our system so that whenever we want to request other rods being made, at any point in time, it's possible that this general purpose metal press isn't going to be able to do the craft that we want it to do because it's already busy making 64 platinum rods, and it's going to take like 3 minutes for that to clear out before we can get to the craft that we've requested. And so I think for a lot of these, we are going to set up dedicated systems like we've done with everything else, where we back up on the item that's required, as opposed to trying to craft them as and when they're needed, because I think that's just going to make things run a lot more smoothly going forward. So I think we'll set up 3 more metal presses, 1 for the Enderium gear, 1 for the platinum rods, and 1 for the cyanite plates. Alright, so I've gone ahead and built 3 more metal presses. I decided to weave them in between our pre-existing metal presses, and I've changed the way this was set up. Previously, we had these kind of spread out with a 1-block gap. I've now compacted all of these pattern providers down so that they're all right next to their associated metal press. Nothing's really changed here. We still have the gears, the plates, the rods, and the wire. I do need to put my wire pattern back in there, which I did teach earlier, so now our system fully knows how to make universal cable. And then I've added 3 more metal presses here. 1 with a gear mold, 1 with a rod mold, and 1 with a plate mold. And then down here, using the same system as before, we have an EMI interface, which is currently offline, but should be fairly easy to reconnect to the network. If we do something like this, we can kind of run it to our pre-existing cable right there. And then in here, we just need to tell this to keep a stock of the items we need. For example, cyanite is going to be one of those items. We can put that in there. And then in here, we can go and add a new filter for cyanite. Up here, I have colored these pipes. We have green for Enderium, we have white for platinum, and we have blue for cyanite. I think that might be light blue for cyanite. Let me go new filter, item stack. Let's put in the cyanite, and then let's go ahead and specify light blue. Save. Cool. And that does indeed work. That should put it onto the belt and should start making cyanite plates. Nice. And then here we have 3 framed drawers. all with storage downgrades. And then over here, we've got the remote upgrade, and we've got trim underneath to connect all of those together. We can now do the exact same thing with the platinum. We've now got 119, which is what's come in whilst I was working on this. Let's place that in here as well. Keep one platinum, like so. And let's go ahead and add platinum with its own new filter. This one wants white, which is right at the end. There we go. And that is going to work as well. The final item here that we need to automate is, of course, the Enderium. And that one is going to be by far and away the trickiest, because to make the Enderium, we need to get a mixer, specifically a multi-block mixer, so that we can make the Enderium. So to make the Enderium, we need a multi-block mixer. The multi-block mixer is part of a casting multi-block, which I think I've mentioned before, but we've not actually set up yet. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to get a bunch of grout, and I'm going to start smelting that grout over here into black bricks, because we're going to need a ton of black bricks to make this work. We need a couple of blocks here. We're going to need the mixer itself. Normally, you can use the simple mixer. However, the recipe for this has been disabled, so we are going to have to use the multi-block mixer. I'll bookmark that. This is made by combining either an Elite Technium machine frame or the simple mixer. As I mentioned, the simple mixer not makeable, so we're going to use the Elite Technium machine frame with molten black brick to make the multi-block mixer. We then need a multi-block controller, which is this guy here. We're also going to need to get some regulators. I think we need 4 of these. We'll come back to why in just a second. We need a fuel tank, which is this guy right here. And we also probably need another one of the solidifiers. I'm assuming in this scenario, it is a multi-block solidifier as well. And if we look at the recipes, a lot of these are made using the simple version in a solidifier with molten black brick. So the simple solidifier plus 4 buckets of molten black brick gets us the multi-block solidifier. The controller here is made with a simple controller, plus you guessed it, 4 buckets of molten black brick. And so over in here, I'm going to put down some more fuel real quick just to keep that going. And over here, where we have kind of a general purpose setup, I'm going to go ahead and throw down another simple solidifier next to this so we can do some solidifying. And in here, we can now, for example, make another simple controller, place that into here. We can also do with some fuel in here as well to allow that to actually melt. That should make the multi-block controller, and then it's the exact same setup as we saw before for the mixer, the solidifier, and the regulators here are made using actually just black bricks and more black brick. Okay, so a bit more simple solidifying later, and we have a couple of these blocks ready to go, and of course we also have black bricks over here. So the basic setup kind of looks like a Tinker's Construct smeltering, in that we have the controller on one side, we have a tank going down for the fuel, then we have our mixer, which can go in any of the wall sides. This center block, by the way, is not necessary, it's just here to make it easier for me to place things down like this. And if we break this, this is like the smallest structure you can make. Much like a Tinker smeltery, if we look at the guide, you can make this much bigger. I've made this tiny one. You can make a 3x3 interior, or even like a massive giant multi-block structure like this. All of that does work, but in here now, we've got a couple of options for how this works. So what we do need to do is we do need to give it fuel. For now, I'm going to put lava in here. There are better fuels that we might look at, especially if we want this to be faster. Of course, this is actually no longer producing lava fast enough. Interesting. We're going to have to increase our lava production. I'm not quite sure what started to eat all of that up. It's not ideal, though. Also, we do have another problem over here with these. I've had to temporarily disconnect these because the metal presses don't stop working when the drawers are full, and so it basically just fills up the drawers and then starts to spew out the items after the fact, which is not ideal. Again, we'll come back to that in just a second. For now, though, just to show how this works, if I put the lava into here, inside of here now, we can turn this on, and we've got 1 slot, which is not very big. You can put down more blocks like this to make it taller, and that gives you extra slots. If we put down like 3, like this, that gives us 3 total slots. To make Enderium, we need ender pearls, we need lead, and we need platinum. And there are a few nifty features of this multi-block that are going to make it good for doing this craft. The first is that if we turn it off, we can put the ender pearl in, we can put the lead in, and we can put the platinum in, and then we can click this filter button at the top to lock each of these slots to a specific item. So now there's always going to be space to melt ender pearls, lead, and platinum. And so if I turn it back on and we get, for example, a hopper, we can kind of show this off. We can put the hopper on the front. We're not going to use a hopper, of course, but if we do this, this, and this, it's only going to put one of each in, no matter what happens. It's always going to put the right items in the right slots in a similar way to how the Craft of Marif tools does it. Next up, the regulators currently aren't added, but we can use these to reserve space. So I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4 regulators down. And now you'll see that we have a tank that is partitioned for 1,000 millibuckets of 4 fluids. We've also managed to get an extra slot as well, which currently is not being used. But essentially now what's going to happen is the controller is going to keep melting items until we get to 1,000 millibuckets of a given liquid, then it will stop melting those items. So for example, we get 250 millibuckets of molten ender per ender pearl that we melt, so we're about to go up to 750, it's going to melt one more to take us to 1,000, and then after that the ender pearl is just going to sit in the controller and not get melted until we use the molten ender that is already in there. Over here in the molten mixer, we can go ahead and click this filter to change the resource we want it to make. I believe this scans what's inside of the mixer for alloys you can make. Right now it says found 1 alloy. That alloy is Enderium. And so now if we turn this on, it's going to make Enderium. The reason we put down 4 regulators here, one is for molten ender pearls, one is for molten lead, one is for molten platinum, the 4th one there is for molten enderium, and so the same thing is going to happen here. It's going to make up to 1,000 millibuckets of molten enderium, and then it's going to stop making more enderium because that's going to exceed the partitioned 1,000 millibuckets in that 4th fluid. And so now the final piece of the puzzle is to use the solidifier back here to solidify the enderium. So here, again, we've got a filter, and it says click on a fluid to filter. So if we click enderium, it's going to go ahead and filter to enderium. And if we wanted to here, we could actually just go ahead and get a gear mold. We could kind of cut out the middleman. And if we just put that gear mold in like that and turn this on, it should go ahead and just solidify the enderium, because that's the only thing we filtered in here, into enderium gears. And so in theory, all we really need to do now here is export lead, platinum, and ender pearls to this multi-block controller, and it will continually melt those items down into enderium and then solidify that enderium into enderium gears. If we wanted to as well, we could go ahead and craft up a coolant tank. This is made with glass and blast brick. That's actually surprisingly easy to do, and we should still have some black brick over in here. Never mind, we do not. The Twitch chat did point out that you can melt down clay in here to get black brick, which is way cheaper than going through the effort of melting the grout into black brick first. And so once that's done, that's going to get us the multi-block coolant tank. And of course, using our XNet system, we could just go ahead and export some of our liquid nitrogen round to here. We could actually go ahead and steal this tank because we're no longer really using this setup to make diamonds, or at least hopefully not going to be using it for making diamonds for too much longer. And so what we could also do is we could go ahead and put this down really anywhere in the multi-block, let's say right about here. And then if we throw down our ender tank, we could use a mechanical pipe to extract, like this, into that coolant tank, and that should make it just that little bit faster at solidifying the enderium into enderium gears. So I've made a few tweaks here. I've swapped the controller and the solidifier. I just moved the controller to the back and the solidifier to the front so that the frame drawer here is on the front side. I think it's just going to look a little bit nicer going forward. I've gone ahead and thrown down an export bus to export the ender pearls, the platinum, and the lead automatically. And then over here, we've also gone ahead and thrown down an XNet connector to export the lava automatically as well. Speaking of which, I've also added a ton more cobblestone melters here. We now have 20 of them all working to produce lava just that little bit faster. And I think we are close to producing more lava than we're using. It's possible that we do still need even more of these cobblestone melters to get enough lava, which I did check. It's currently the best way that we can make lava. It looks like later on down the line there are other alternatives to get lava more quickly, but for now, I think it's just more cobblestone melters to make things faster. And so now that this is up and running, looking back at the ultimate Technium Ingot, we have Enderium gears, we have Platinum rods, we have Nanite ingots, we have Elite Technium Ingots, we have Antimatter pellets, we have Replica blocks, we have Cyanite plates. The only things we don't have are double crates of rotten flesh and mob essence. Obviously, not all of this is automated at the moment, but we're not too far away from getting our first ultimate Technium. To do that, we need double crates of rotten flesh and mob essence. I'm going to start with the double crates of rotten flesh because, as you've seen if you've watched any previous episode, it takes a little bit of time for the simulation chamber to kind of wind up in terms of producing a decent number of predictions. And so real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another simulation chamber with another loot fabricator. We'll set it up in exactly the same way that we've done here. In fact, I'll probably squeeze it in between these two simulation chambers and loot fabricators. All we need to do is get a zombie data model, which we can do with 2 rotten flesh, 6 elite technium nuggets, and 1 hostile data model, which we've made before. It requires the model framework. This seems pretty straightforward. 1 cyanide nugget, 1 elite technium nugget, and 1 elite control circuit, which we can, of course, go ahead and request. Let's do this, this, and this. That should be that good to go. In terms of getting rotten flesh, if I'm not mistaken, we can buy this from the market. We totally can. And so if I grab 16 tech books from the system, we can head over to the catalog and we should be able to buy 2 rotten flesh. Not a bad investment, considering after this, we should be able to make infinite rotten flesh with the 2 rotten flesh that we have. So can I go ahead and make the hostile data model? I can. Can we go ahead and make the zombie data model? We totally can. Perfect. And so, as I mentioned, I'm going to reset up this system in the middle for zombies, and then we'll look at making this multi-block fluidizer. So we have our simulation chamber with the zombie data model. It's going to take a while, of course, to get self-aware. The sheep is not even self-aware yet. That's because it's kind of fully backed up here. But what we should be able to do is something like this and like that, because this also produces the generalized overworld predictions just the same as the sheep does, so we don't need a new draw for that. Down here, we have managed to get our first zombie prediction, though, so we can go ahead and set that to produce rotten flesh, and from there, so long as this pipe here is set to extract, we should continually produce the rotten flesh and send it around to the draw. Cool. And hopefully, by the time we're finished with the fluidizer, we have enough rotten flesh to make 1 of these double crates of rotten flesh. We need 81 in total. Thankfully, you do get quite a lot per zombie prediction, and so it really should not take too long. Down here, though, we now need to make another multi-block structure from the Extreme Reactors mod, and that, of course, is the fluidizer. So the fluidizer casing is not too difficult. It requires steel casing, which is lead, iron, and glass, surrounded with cyanide, which for now, at least, we do have a decent amount of. So let's go ahead and make some of that. The quest here just wants me to make the 1. That's fine. Then we need the fluidizer controller. This also doesn't seem too difficult to make. The fluidizer controller here requires a redstone comparator. I'm going to make a stack of redstone torches just so we don't have to keep crafting those. Boom and boom. And then we need another elite technium machine frame, which our system can almost craft. It just does not know how to craft elite technium ingots into elite technium nuggets. Thankfully, we can do that for it. Let's do this, start, and boom. There's our fluidizer controller. Fantastic. We then also need to make a fluidizer solid injector, a fluidizer power port, and a fluidizer output port. Those are going to be really the only things we need to get this up and running. So the solid injector does require another elite technium machine frame. The output port doesn't require an elite technium machine frame, neither does the power port. Okay, that is fine. Let's do the power port first. Actually, let's request another elite technium machine frame so that can get going in the background. Then we can go ahead and make the power port to be able to provide power to the machine. The output port here requires 2 ultimate tanks. That is actually fine because we did kind of accidentally teach our system in a previous episode how to make ultimate tanks. I say accidentally because we ended up not needing them for that episode, but now that we have them, we can go ahead and use them. The fluidizer solid injector is also now pretty straightforward. We have that elite technium machine frame, and once our ultimate tanks are done, we can go ahead and make 1 dispenser after we make 1 burr, after we get a single piece of string to make that burr, and then that's going to get us that dispenser, which should finally allow us to make the fluidizer output port. So this is not a machine that I have made before. However, I believe that it's kind of similar in shape and size to the Extreme Reactor that we have down in front of us here. I've been told by the Twitch chat that we want to make a 3x3x4. So again, we might end up moving this, but for now, let's do a 3x3 here. Let me throw the controller at the front. Let me put the solid injector and the fluidizer output with the fluidizer port. It does also mention in the book, we have the Extreme book here. In here, there is a chapter on the fluidizer, including how to build it. It says the minimum is a 3x3x3, and it looks kind of like this with the parts that we've listed. You can put glass in the walls like we've done with this. I don't think we're necessarily going to need the glass just because we don't really have that big of a fluidizer. Also, we're now fully out of steel. I did not see that one coming. That's because we've actually backed up on slag of all things, so our steel has not been being made for a little while now. The good news is that's a fairly easy fix. If we can make a void upgrade, which we totally can, we can put that in there. That's going to delete the excess slag that is being produced and should bring steel back online. The bad news is that does mean we don't really have enough steel to finish this though, because we need to do something like this, of course, without that bit there. You're going to go back here, and we need to make this at least like 2 blocks taller with more fluidizer casing. It is probably a good idea for us to get 2 more preheaters down here to make this just that little bit faster, in the same way that we've done with our blast furnaces over here to make the production of deep slate faster. So I've gone ahead and added the blast furnace preheaters and hooked those up with power, so this is now going faster. I don't think it was strictly necessary. I think the only reason we ran out of steel is just because we backed up on slag, but it's nice to have nonetheless, and going forward, if we do need more steel, it's going to come in faster, which is good. Over here, you can do this and just build a 3x3x3. The reason we don't want to do that is that we're going to be using the generalized ender predictions to make molten mob essence, and you'll see this makes 5,000 millibuckets of mob essence. The output tank here on this small fluidizer can only hold 4,000. And so in order to use the generalized ender predictions, we need to go just a little bit higher on this multi-block, and so we're going to go ahead and craft up, ideally, a few more of these, at least 3 more, so we can make at least 6 more of the fluidizer casing, and then that should be enough to do something like this along the top, like so. And now in here, we can hold 8,000 millibuckets. So over here, I have gone ahead and connected up another exporter to our pre-existing cable. So if we grab our ender prediction, which I've also hooked up using one of the remote access upgrades, so if we do something like this, that's going to go ahead and put those into here automatically. And then all we need to do now is provide this with power, of course, to this power tap at the back. So if we do something like this, that should get power, and it should begin turning the generalized ender predictions into molten mob essence as soon as we turn it on. Nice. And so now, I believe, if we wanted to, we could go ahead and I was hoping just book it out of there. Apparently that does not work. What I have gone ahead and done is I did request 2 more teleportation cores because I was hoping to make 2 more ender tanks so that when we actually fully automate this process, we can very easily move the molten mob essence up and around into the ultimate Technium machine frame. I guess we might as well do that now so that we can pull out of the fluidizer into that tank. Whilst we were doing all of that, over here, our zombie data model has been working away, and we now have 192 rotten flesh, which is perfect because it means in here we can go ahead and do something like this, and so long as we have more than 9 of the single compressed crates, we can definitely make at least 1 double compressed crate, which is not enough. We need 4 double compressed crates. Okay, so we are going to have to wait a little while longer. The good news is this is already up at advanced, and so we should already be getting more of these zombie predictions coming in slowly but surely. Whilst we wait for that, let me go ahead and grab these ender teleportation cores. Let's use those to make 2 more ender tanks. 1 and 2. Fantastic. So we will go ahead and we'll give those a new color frequency, and we'll put those down over here with a pipe to extract into there. And then we'll probably end up using another entangled block to remotely access our ultimate Technium machine. Right now, of course, we have these 3 here. I'll probably throw another entangled block on the right side of the controller right about here and hook that up to our ultimate Technium machine so that we can provide it with power, and we can also begin exporting all of the items required. For now, though, let me see if we can't start putting in the items we need. So Enderium gears should be available. They are. We'll throw that in. Fluidizer casing we can make as soon as we have enough steel. I'm going to wait a second for that. Platinum rods we have. We'll put those in. Then we have the Enanite, which we should have. We totally do. We have lots more of that backing up in our reactor as well. Elite Technium we have, even if not in super large quantities, although we should have some more in here. Never mind, it looks like lithium, of all things, is our limiting factor here. I was under the impression lithium should still be being made, but I'll go and take a look and figure out what's up with that. For now, we do have enough Elite Technium to make at least 1 ultimate Technium ingot. Antimatter pellets, we currently have 3 of those. We should be able to get 1 more using just the 1 unstable matter that we have in our inventory. Let me go and throw that into here. Perfect. That gets us the 4 antimatter that we need. And then after that, we just need the replica blocks, the cyanite plates, and the rotten flesh. So the replica blocks we, again, do not have, but definitely can make. We got 2 of the 4. Yes. And then cyanide plates we definitely have because we've got those backing up in the metal press. So let me quickly crush down some more simulation pearls to make the replica dust and smelt that to make the replica ingots for the replica block. We'll also go ahead and see if we don't have enough steel. We got 38. That is kind of close, but probably not enough. And actually, it's lead of all things now. Because we're using the lead to make the enderium, it seems like we're also just kind of out of lead as well. Do we have any lead backed up over here? We do. We have 37. I'm going to steal that temporarily. We need to make 16 of these. Not quite enough, so we are going to have to wait for some more steel to come in. Those 16 should allow us to make 32 fluidizer casing. Once we have them all, we got 20 out of the 32 we need there. We're so close. We just need to wait for 1 or 2 more things to come in, and then we should be good to go. And a little bit more steel later, we have the 32 fluidizer casings. We also, I believe, have 4 double crates of rotten flesh as well. We might even have more backed up in here as well. Now we've got an extra 71. It is coming in nice and quick now. So we just now need to move in the power, as well as the safe spent nuclear waste and the mob essence. So I have gone ahead and purchased a green dandelion from the store so that we can make green dye. And then downstairs, I have colored our ender tank to green, 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 with a diamond, of course, to lock it to our frequency. For now, though, we can, of course, just take the 1 bucket. Nope, we need 16 buckets. Okay, in that case, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab another basic fluid tank, because we can, of course, just take this and use it like this to grab 16 buckets. And once we have all those buckets, we can then, of course, go ahead and just deposit those into the ultimate Technium machine. Apparently that doesn't work like this. You have to put the tank down, just right-clicking on it, puts 1 bucket in, then takes 1 bucket out. That's fine. For now, we can do something like this. Of course, we're going to automate this fully when we automate everything else. Also, I've gone ahead and requested another basic chemical tank. And so for now, again, as a temporary measure to make our first ultimate Technium, we can do something like this to go ahead and put some of the nuclear waste into here. We need specifically 8,000 millibuckets, which is exactly what we've managed to get in here. Perfect. And so now, back over here, we can place this down on the other side, use some of the pressurized tubing to do something like this, set that to extract, like so, and also, of course, make sure that this is set to output on the left. There we go. That should put the safe spent nuclear waste into here as well. And the final piece of the puzzle, of course, is to get power to this, which is easier said than done. But if we can make that entangled block, it's going to make our lives a whole heck of a lot easier. Do we have the binder? We totally do. And so I'm going to go ahead and shift right click on here to select that block. And then down here, we're going to go and place this guy. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right about there, like that. Right click it with the entangle binder. And then real quick, if we go ahead and hook this cable up to power, we should be able to make our first ultimate Technium ingot. And of course, let's not forget the last 2 replica blocks as well. We have done it, finally. It took a bit of work, and of course, not all of this is automated yet, but we do now have the capacity to make all of the items required for the ultimate Technium ingot. Nice. And so, next time, we will come back. We're actually kind of close to completing the quest line now. If we craft the nuggets, we then just need to craft the ultimate Technium machine frame, which is maybe easier said than done, honestly. The platinum gear, I'm assuming, is not just something we can craft, but I'm also assuming that we can do something like this if we just throw it into this metal press. I assume that works for making a platinum gear. It totally does. If we request 2 diamond gears, I think we should be able to just make that ultimate Technium machine frame, at which point I believe we will have completed this quest line. There is a quest here for Skulk. I don't know how necessary that quest is. It's not going to complete the quest line. We're not going to get the sound unless we make the Skulk. It requires 4 Entra dust, which we do not have, but can get if we go ahead and crush some of our Entra crystals. We do obviously still have work to do. I still want to move this setup and get it more fully automated for actual use long term. But real quick, can I make 1 singular piece of Skulk? I can. And that completes the ultimate Technium chapter of the quest book. Of course, we do still have a little bit of automation to go, but I don't think it should be too difficult because Enderium gears are basically automated. We do have some work to do in improving the availability of like lead. We don't have any lead currently, so we're definitely going to have to increase lead production, but automation-wise, this is done. The fluidizer casing is also kind of done. I think we should be fine just using an exporter with a crafting card to continually craft and export these. I think that's going to be fine. Platinum rods are going to require some work. Right now, they're offline because, as we saw earlier, they do kind of just spew out when they fill up. So we're going to have to change the way this works, potentially using some redstone to turn off the metal presses when the drawers get full. Shouldn't be too difficult to do, but it's definitely something that we need to tweak to get right. The inanite is automated. We just need to set up a drawer to receive the excess inanite that we're making. Antimatter pellets are also going to take some work. We're going to have to set up a system that makes the unstable matter, but I don't think that should be impossible. Replica blocks are also just a case of potentially setting up a second loot fabricator over here so that we make both ender pearls and simulation pearls, and then setting up a process to process those simulation pearls into replica blocks. Cyanite plates is kind of the same as the platinum rods. We've got a bit of work there to do in terms of actually just automating the metal press so it doesn't spew. And then the double crates of rotten flesh are kind of already good to go. I think if we just replaced this drawer here with a 2-tier compacting drawer, we could probably just have this auto compact into the double crates of rotten flesh, at which point we just then need to export it to the actual ultimate Technium machine. And so I'm fairly confident that in the next episode, we should be able to automate the production of these ultimate Technium ingots, albeit very slowly, but that is kind of how we've been going with all of our tiers, and then we can increase the speed as we progress forward. And then from there, we're going to be on to the hellish section of the quest book, which I believe is going to finally have us heading through into the nether. But that is a problem for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Techopolis 3 there.